Well, today is our Christmas party, so we brought at least the Canadians together to have a little Christmas celebration in our Toronto World headquarters, and we'll be joined by Zoom with our Australian delegation because we're going to announce the results of the Viewers' Choice Awards for the Rebbies. That's what we call our prize for the best Rebel reporter. But while our team is here in town, what better opportunity than to stop and have a catch-up with our chief reporter and Alberta Bureau Chief, Sheila Gunn Reid, who joins me now. Great to see you.
It's great to be in the office. I'm not here as much as I would like to be, but things are changing in here. I don't think we had this set up, this part set up last time.
You know, we haven't fully deployed the whole new studio, but it is more a real life studio than a green screen studio.
Yeah.
There's these fancy chairs. I interviewed Conrad Black in there the other day, and I think we have some other plans. We're not rushing to get it done, but I think it is a fun thing to have a real live studio, so thank you for being here. Now, Rebel News, I think, has shifted. During the lockdown of the pandemic, that was our overarching mission. It was, I think, 80% of what we did. Of course, we covered other things too, but every aspect of the lockdown, from the quarantine for the country, for the curfew in Quebec, for the shut down the business laws, for the forced vaccine, like there was 20 different aspects that we covered, and we covered it like crazy. We're still working on some of those files. Tamara Lich is still on trial. Arthur Pavlovsky still has an appeal emanating from so we're doing that, but Rebel News has moved on to the frontline battles of today. What are some of the frontline battles that you see as our chief reporter?
You know, I think a lot of what we're working on now are the things that still flow from the lockdowns, in that the government is attacking the truth tellers that told the truth about the lockdowns and the effects of the lockdowns and the effects of COVID vaccines. We're seeing that through Justin Trudeau's censorship legislation, you know, C11, C18, his attacks on the naturopath industry, the regulation of natural health products. So I think that's where we're moving to is, you know, the people who told the truth during the pandemic and then were censored by social media. Justin Trudeau is now trying to legislate social media companies to enforce silence of his political enemies. I think that's where our next battleground is. It's still in civil liberties. It's still the fight for free speech. It's still the little guy against the hammer of the government. You
know, you made me think of something about how Trudeau isn't stopping. Like, he really is. No. If it's the COVID today or disinformation or whatever it is, I mean, as Dr. James Lindsay said, the issue is never the issue. The revolution is the issue. And Trudeau will use whatever issue is in front of him to get the revolution. By revolution, I mean authoritarian control over our lives and future, power to the government. You know, he is so authoritarian by nature, and he never stops. He's got a team around him that are the same way. I think of Stephen Guilbeault. That is a pure ideologue who cares only about the revolution. And we know that because he was willing to commit a crime for the revolution.
Well, and we're also seeing a reoccurring theme in Justin Trudeau's government. We experienced this firsthand when we won a court order to be in the leadership debates, and he still wouldn't acknowledge us as journalists, even though a court had just slapped him on the wrist and said they are journalists. His government is still doing the same thing. We saw, you know, Bill C-69, the No More Pipelines law get struck down. And what did Stephen Guilbeault, the environment minister, say the next day? We're still going to proceed with this. We saw the plastics ban get struck down. And he said, we're still going to proceed with this. This government keeps getting slapped down, and then they continue to ignore the courts.
And that's a sign of an ideological, I think it was Churchill who said a fanatic is someone who can't change his mind and won't change the subject. And think about Stephen Guilbeault that way. He was in Dubai, he jetted there. I'm sure he went first class, if not on a private airline. And he was talking about, we have such huge regulatory plans, they're novel. He has so many plans to regulate and shut down and cap the fossil fuels industry, which means to cap jobs. And I'm thinking, he is undeterred. The number 1, 2, and 3 issue in Canadians, according to liberal pollsters like Abacus, the number 1, 2, and 3 issues are all cost of living, prices of groceries, cost of housing, Pierre Poilievre had a viral hit with his 15-minute video called Housing Hell.
Yeah.
And you might say, well, that's a bit of a shocking title. Watch the video, it is hell. And so you would think they would address what Canadians care about. No, Stephen Guilbeault thinks that what Canadians want right now is more carbon taxes, more bans on plastics, and shutting down the oil and gas industry. The guy is, maniac's the wrong word, although he is manic about his issue. He is, I guess, like a Terminator, as they say in that movie. You can't negotiate with him, you can't bargain with him. He will go until he is stopped.
He's an extremist on these issues. I don't know if you saw it last week out of Alberta. Our Environment Minister, Rebecca Schultz, said, the Environment Minister tried to get me to sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, before he divulged the plans to continue to phase out Alberta's oil and gas with these emissions caps that he then went on the international stage and announced to the world. He didn't even give her a heads up on it unless she agreed to shut up about it. And that's not what she's elected to do.
I've never heard of that before.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard of a media lockup. So what that is...
An embargo.
Yeah, so journalists are invited typically an hour or two before a budget, let's say, so that they have time to read the budget documents and ask questions of experts. Yeah. And they're given it 1 or 2 hours before the whole world so that when it's announced, they're ready to say something. They're not spending 2 hours reading it. That's a very time-limited lockup for people who are not part of government. And so that's the only thing I can think of that is close to a non-disclosure agreement. It's just, hey, we'll give you a sneak peek, but you can't blurt it out. And there's other reasons why they don't want to blurt it out, because if someone knows what the budget is before the budget's released, they might buy or sell something on the stock market, whatever. That's the only thing I can think of. I guess there are some top secret state secrets.
Sure.
But to tell a cabinet minister of another government, I'm not going to tell you what my plans are unless you keep it secret from your government and your people. I have never heard of that in my life in Canada or frankly in any other democracy. That is an insane thing to do. That is a crazy, that is an out of control guy.
Yeah, well, it also makes me wonder, who else are they saying this to?
Right.
And who else is complying?
Who has signed that? You're so right. You know, I remember way back in the first Gulf War. So this is more than 20 years ago now. CNN, their boss, I think, if I'm remembering his name, Eason Jordan, I'll have to check that, wrote, I think it was the New York Times or the Washington Post, admitted that they had made a deal with Saddam Hussein, that they had a secret deal. CNN had a secret deal with Saddam Hussein that if they agreed to shape what they said, including to be his mouthpiece, they would be allowed to stay in Iraq when other media weren't. So CNN cut a secret deal with a dictator, didn't tell their viewers, and he later confessed this in a newspaper. How could you ever trust CNN before? It's not just that they said, okay, we're keeping a secret. It's they agreed to shape what they said. They were actually a foreign propaganda mouthpiece. Do you doubt that Stephen Guilbeault has done the same thing with the CBC? And heck, why not with the CTV or the very many media companies that they subsidize? Or
with Doug Ford, we see these massive electric vehicle battery deals that are coming to Ontario. What kind of silence is being bought on the back end for that?
Point.